Saying Bismillah is not a condition, and blowing into the palms is not a condition either. These are from the Sunnah aspects. So just need to highlight that, because a person might then think that this is absolutely necessary every time that he does Tayammum. That's not the case. The pillars of Tayammum, it has to be earth. The person strikes it once. If he wants, he can strike it twice. There's two narrations. Strike it once or twice. And then in this video, he goes with the head first, the face. That's the view of the Hanabila. The majority say you go with the hands first, because Allah says, "Wamsahu bi aydikum or wamsahu bi aydikum wa wujuhikum." Wipe your hands and then your face. Some of the ayat, or another ayat, says, "Wamsahu bi wujuhikum wa aydikum." Another ayat says, "Wipe your face first and then your hands." But the reason why the majority have gone with hands first is because the Messenger of Allah ﷺ told Ammar ibn Yasir that you should have just done this. As in, Ammar ibn Yasir was in Janaba and he didn't know what to do. Tayammum had not been revealed yet, so he rolled around on the earth. He described himself like an animal, because he said, I needed to find purification, I needed to purify myself. So I thought the closest way is for me to resemble what animals do, because that's what they do to clean themselves. So when he went back to Medina, he tells the Messenger of Allah sallam, this is what I did. So the Prophet sallam said, it would have been sufficient for you to do this. And then he described the tayammum. And this is why this takes precedence. This is in Bukhari and Muslim, this is in al-Ahkam as well. That he wiped his hands first and then the face. I mean, inshallah, there's flexibility. If a person did face first and hands then after, then that's fine. But I think the correct order of things is do the hands first and then the face. So these are the only two things that I would say that you have to pay attention to here. Strike the earth once. You don't have to strike it. The Messenger of Allah said, "Wadribul ard," as in like beat, strike the earth. But basically, make sure you've got enough earth on your hands. The earth has to stick to your hands. So grass is from earth, leaves are from earth, twigs are from earth. Because what we're talking about, earth meaning anything that comes out of the earth. And this is the correct view, this is the view of the Hanafis and the Malikis. Anything that comes out of the earth. But the thing is, things like that, grass and leaves and twigs and things like that, they don't stick to your hands. It has to be something that sticks to your hands. This is why the Hanabila, they're the strictest. They say it has to be some kind of a composite. It has to be some kind of a mixture, like mud, so that it sticks to your hands. Literally, when you put your hands on the earth, you've got a substance that is now on your hands. Like mud, for example, you've got a paste kind of thing on your hands. That's why in this video, the Hanabila would not agree with this. Because this person here, he's beating the earth, and he is not doing it with something which is, going to stick to his hands. But what seems to be the correct view, right, is that it has to be from the earth. So mud, sand, limestone. I mean, bricks are made of a mixture of these things, so you could use a brick, inshallah. But the main thing here, because all of the composites of the brick comes from the earth, so that's fine. But the thing is here now, you have to make sure that when you have beaten the earth, so basically once you have put your hands on the earth, you've got some kind of residue, you've got substance on your hands. It doesn't have to be a paste, like the Hanabila say, but it has to be something that sticks to your hands. Okay, so I'm not sure, he doesn't really show that in the video, but this is really essential when it comes to tayammum. Otherwise, you're just wiping your hands over your face with nothing on it. There has to be something that is on your hands, whether it's sand or mud or soil or whatever else it might be. Okay, so the first thing is that the person makes niyyah. You don't need to say Bismillah. If you say Bismillah, that's fine. The first thing the person makes niyyah. Okay, I'm going to do tayammum. Just like you would do when you're doing wudu or ghusl. You need to have niyyah, otherwise the action is not accepted. So then you beat the earth, or basically wipe the earth, or wipe the brick, or wipe sand, whatever you're going to have, a tray of sand or whatever it might be. And you make sure that you put your hands in it once. If you want, you can do it twice if you feel that there's a need. If you feel that you haven't got enough, then you do it again. The point here is that the Messenger of Allah said, beat the earth, is so that you've got enough something on your hand. Then the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to blow into his hands to remove anything which is excess or anything which is going to be harmful. This is the hikmah of blowing into your hands. You don't have to blow into your hands. It's not part of tayammum. But he did it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to remove any kind of excess. If a person does it, then it is good. If a person doesn't do it, then that is also fine. It is not part of tayammum. Then, like I said, the correct view is you wipe over. Now, what he's doing here is correct. You remove the palm of your left hand to wipe over the outside of your right hand, and then the palm of your right hand to wipe over the outside of your left hand. Okay? And then you don't beat the earth again. Then you do your face. And you have to make sure you do your entire face. And you have to make sure that you do your entire hands as well. So from the wrist to the fingertips, and from the wrist to the fingertips. And then from when you do your face, from the top of the head to the to your chin, and from ear to ear. Once a person has done that, then tayammum has been completed. And then he goes on to talking about the conditions. And basically the conditions are, a person cannot find water, or he can find water but it's difficult for him to use the water, or he's got water but he needs that water that he's got and he can't perform ghusl or wudu. I think scenario number 1 and number 3 is sufficient. It doesn't really need explanation. Scenario number 2 needs further clarification. The person cannot perform wudu because he'll be harmed by water touching him. In this, there are a number of scenarios. So, for example, if a person can do wudu partially, but he can't make wudu on other aspects of his limb, then the ulama have said he makes wudu with whatever he can do, and for the rest of it, he does tayammum. So let's say, for example, a person can't wash over his left arm. We will say, can you wipe over your left arm? If the answer is yes, then you must do that, because water is touching your body, and that is sufficient. But if a person cannot wipe, so if a person's got plaster on or a cast on, wipe over it, that's fine. But if a person can't wash or wipe, okay, and the doctors are saying here that either, and this is something that was discussed in the conference, what is inability? Inability, the person will be harmed. The person physically can't do it. He has no arm, for example. So if he has no arm, we can't say wash your arm. That aspect of wudu is gone. He's unable. He will be harmed, meaning if he washes it, and this is what happens with cataract patients, etc. If they wash their face, the doctor says you're going to be harmed. So in that scenario, we say to them, can you wipe over your eye? Quite often the answer will be no. So in that scenario, we'll say, listen, perform wudu as normal. Leave that eye patch or wherever it is, leave that area, and then perform tayammum for the rest. But then a person will say, well, I can't wipe over my eye either with water or earth. So we'll say to that person, then just leave it then. Then just leave it. So the point that we're making here now is, if a person has no ability to do anything, then he leaves it. If a person is able, but there's going to be greater harm, then he's unable. If a person is able to do it, but there is a lot of pain involved, then he is unable. And if a person is able to do it, but it's going to delay his recovery, then that person is unable. Okay? So if a person is unable to use water from one of those 4 things, then he performs tayammum. If a person is not able to do tayammum because of one of those 4 things, then the correct view from the ulama is he has to see if there is a way that he can wipe over a bandage or something like that instead. So say, for example, he's got a gash on his arm. He can't wash it. Can you put a covering on it and then wipe over it? No, because it can't get wet at all. Can you put a covering over it and not the arm, let's say the hand, or let's say the arm, let's leave it at the arm. Can you put a covering over it and wipe earth over it? Let's go with hand, because the hand is part of tayammum. Then we will say you have to do that then. So that's the same thing when we're talking about the cataract. But if a person is unable to do any of those things, then the correct view, and this is the view of the Hanabila, is that the person is overlooked then. He's tried everything. He doesn't need to do anything. The Malikiya say no, you have to wait and make qada, because you can't have any kind of salat unless you've got tahara, and you can't make tahara, so then what you need to do is you make qada. The Hashafis and the Hanafis say perform salat in this state where you haven't got tahara, and then make qada when you are able to make tahara. But if you look at those three views, this is ijtihad, they're making ijtihad and qiyas, etc. But if you look at those three views, it leads to hardship. The view of the Hanabila is more practical, and it is closer to the text as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما آتاها ما جعل الله عليكم في الدين من حرج. And there are many ahadith as well where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, إذا أمرتكم بشيء فأتوا منه ما استطعت. If you are able to do something, if I've told you to do something, as much as you can. And if you can't, then it is overlooked. And we also have an incident where a Bedouin came into the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and he says, Ya Rasulullah, I have had relations with my wife during the day in Ramadan. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ tells him, this is the expiation, either do 1, 2 or 3. And he said, I can't do any of them. So he says to him, all right, sit down then. Meaning, if you can't do the expiation, then what can you do about it? So the point here is that if you can't perform wudu, if you can't perform tayammum, if there is no way that you can perform tahara, then pray the way you are. Well, what can you do about it? Just pray, and inshallah Allah will accept it, because He hasn't placed any difficulty in the religion, and He hasn't placed any burden upon you which you can't bear. So these are some of the things when it comes to tahara, the description of it, the conditions of it, and what nullifies. Okay, so now the nullifiers of the tahara, or anything which would nullify normal wudu or major impurity. So if a person has relations, then his purification is gone. If he passes away and goes to the toilet, then he has to perform tayammum. Again, it's just the same thing when it comes to normal wudu. The other thing though, when it comes to tayammum, which is a little bit different to wudu, is when he is able to use water, the tayammum is automatically invalidated. So say for example, a person has performed tayammum because he doesn't have any water available. As soon as water arrives, even if he's in salat, the salat is invalid, the tahara is invalid, he needs to go back and perform wudu. And if a person is unwell, he's performing tayammum. If the doctor comes into the room now and says, okay, you can have a shower, you can go back to normal, automatically, even if he's in the state of tahara after performing tayammum, then we will say that that tahara of tayammum is invalid, automatically. Because one of the conditions of tayammum is that a person can only do tayammum فَإِنَّمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا سَعِيدٌ طَيِّبًا. Then perform tayammum if water is unavailable. As soon as water becomes available, and this is the view of the majority, then tayammum is completely invalid, automatically. Another condition where the ulama have differed when it comes to the nullifiers is, does tayammum need to be repeated for every single salat? And some of the ulama have said yes. Even if you haven't broken your wudu, you have to perform tayammum for every single salat. This is because the ulama have differed. Is tayammum a rafi' or is it a mubih? Mubih basically means, is it a concession? If it's a concession, they have said you need to perform tayammum for every single salat. Because it doesn't actually remove you from janaba, it doesn't actually remove you from not being in a state of wudu. It is just something which is a concession. You can't do wudu, you can't do ghusl, so you perform tayammum. And the reason why you do tayammum is because there's a concession until the next salat. Then you have to review the situation. If there's water available and you're able to use water, then you must do so. If you can't, then you have to perform tayammum for every single salah. Needs to be a constant renewal of checking your situation. What seems to be the correct view, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even calls it tahara in the Quran, which is that tayammum is actual tahara. So once a person has performed tayammum, it is as if he's done ghusl. In your mind, psychologically, and obviously a long period of our lives goes with making wudu or making ghusl, so it becomes a bit difficult for us to accept. But in actual fact, when a person does tayammum, he is now absolutely clean and pure, just as he would if he had done ghusl and wudu. And the correct view, like we're saying here, is that this becomes a rafi'. And a rafi' basically means rafa'a, meaning all kinds of impurity have been removed. And this is because after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, فَتَيَمُّمُ صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ مِنْ. Then he says, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah doesn't want any difficulty for you, that's why he's legislated tayammum. وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ. But he wants to purify you. See here now, look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, tayammum is purification. Therefore, if a person was to perform tayammum, he can't think any lesser of himself. He can't think, okay, well, I haven't done wudu correctly, or I haven't done ghusl correctly. No, the correct view in this is that when a person has done tayammum, it is as if he has done ghusl, it is as if he has done wudu. This is because, as you've seen from the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want any difficulty for you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually goes on to say that he wants for us to be completed. وَلَكِنْ يُرِيدُ لِيُطَهِّرَكُمْ وَلِيُتِمَّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكُمْ. So he wants to complete his favor upon you. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And this comes in the context, I know I'm making this longer than it needs to be, but this comes in the context of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that he has completed for us our religion. الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ. This is in the previous page. On this one here, لِيُتِمَّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكُمْ. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has completed his favor. What does that mean? That means our religion is the best sharia, it is the most sincere of sharia, is the most correct of sharia, is the abrogating sharia, and it's the sharia which is the most practical. The people of the book had no such solution as tayammum. It didn't exist. If a person was impure, he was impure. And one of the sharias, the sharia of the Yahud, if there is something which is najis on your clothes, you have to cut it off or you have to throw that piece of garment away. And the Nasara, they became very relaxed when it comes to najasa, as we see in the world that we live in today. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that here, He has made us balanced. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, okay, if you can't use water, then use earth. And as we have discussed, if you can't use earth, then you don't have to use anything. With all of that then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here, this is His completion of His favor upon you. These are some of the rulings when it comes to tayammum. There's much more that can be said. I mean, this is something that we study in the institute, and we spend a good couple of hours in talking about tayammum and its hikmah as well. Ibn Qayyim has a lot of nice things to talk about when it comes to its hikmah, and there are so many different things. And there are a couple of things here as well I'm not entirely satisfied with in my explanation in itself as well, but I think you get a rough idea, especially with the Hanbali opinion of it being a paste. I'm not sure if that's the right way of describing it as well, to be honest, but they have been very particular in the way that they say that tayammum has to be made, to the extent that if you were in the desert, they said, no, you can't perform tayammum, because it's not, like I said, the best way I can describe it, it's not a pasty kind of thing. If you're in the desert and you beat the sand floor, the dune, with your hand, they have said, no, this is not Sa'id and Tayyib. They're not satisfied with that. So you could be in the desert and you can't perform tayammum. But for us, what we're saying is the correct view is that anything which is connected to the earth or comes out of the earth, as long as it sticks to your hands and it sticks to your face, then the tayammum has been completed. I'm sorry for the length of this. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reason why I started off making it short with just a short piece of advice, but then I realized as we're going along, there are a lot of masail that need to be discussed, which would be of benefit, I'm sure, of a lot of people. Because this is a question that's quite often asked, so I just made it into a voice note so that people, inshallah, will benefit. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us all tawfiq and success, and that He gives shifa to all of those who are suffering, and that He preserves all of those who are healthy. Wallahu a'lam, sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.